Coming up on City Corner, we're going to take a trip back to China with one very special girl from St. Louis. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome to City Corner. I'm Sarah Bernard. St. Louis is thankfully a very diverse city, and in its diversity, there's a group of girls here from China who were born in China and adopted by St. Louis families over the years up to probably around 2010, 2012. Am I right, Dawn?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the girls who came from China and are here in St. Louis today, and they're living amongst us and thriving and doing great. And this is a result of the one-child policy that existed in China up until about 2012. Our guest today is Dawn Meadows Dixon, who is fortunately the mom of two of these girls from China. And Dawn, you went back to China this past summer with one of your daughters.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I did. It was an unbelievable experience. She got to go there on a medical mission trip. She had written an essay. Some Singaporean doctors had said they wanted to go back to China, go to an orphanage, and they wanted to take a girl that was adopted from China with them. So she wrote this essay. She was picked, and the adoption agency here in St. Louis said, "How would you like to go and document her trip?" And she said to me, my daughter said, "Mom, both of our dreams are going to come true. I'm going to go back to China. You're going to do a documentary." So it was an unbelievable experience. What people need to realize is that here in St. Louis, we have about 500 families that adopted girls from China, and some of them have 2 kids. So you're talking maybe 1,000 girls. And the adoption process from China, as you said, because of the one-child policy, started in 1992. 200,000 girls were adopted. 80% came to the United States, and we are fortunate here in St. Louis to have a community of these young women.
Right, so your daughter, Isabella Dixon, who's now 20 and a college student, she went back to China and you went with her, as you just mentioned. You made this documentary. So tell us a little bit about what we're going to see in just a moment.
Okay, so what is so fascinating about this is my daughter, and she is a twin, but the twin didn't go, just Isabella, is your typical St. Louis girl. She loves the St. Louis Cardinals. She loves toasted ravioli. She loves Ted Drew's. She always talks about where she went to high school, so you know she's really a St. Louisan. But she was born in China. And so many of these girls are now coming of age, and they are on a search for self-discovery. And so that's what this trip was about, a search for self-discovery as these girls come of age. And I was just so honored to go along and document the trip.
Okay, so let's take a look right now at this 10-minute documentary called Back to China. Here we go.
I'm excited. We're in China. Chinese in China. My name is Isabella Dixon. Oh, yes, at the intersection. I was born here in China in 1998. China's one-child policy was in full force. I was left on a busy street corner at 2 months old, and an American couple adopted me in 1999. I was 15 months old and in a foster home for a year. This is my first trip back. Oh, stop. Stop. I was invited by a group of med students and a doctor from Singapore to volunteer here at Alina's home. A foster home in Beijing founded by Children's Hope International. It serves mentally and physically disabled children. As a college pre-med student, It is my dream to one day be a doctor. I know that I was in a foster home, probably similar to this one. It's difficult to imagine yourself in that situation when you are personally so far removed from it. There's been so many years, there's no memories of it.
Come on, you gotta eat.
In a way, it's a way of giving back when they volunteer in homes like these to just bless China, really, and to give back something to the country that they were born in.
Dr. Po Leon Lim is a graduate of Harvard and went to medical school at Columbia. She is now a professor at a medical school in Singapore. Dr. Lim has 2 adopted children from China, including her youngest, adopted from Alina's home.
They are Chinese, they're Chinese American, and it just allows them to reconnect with a part of who they are, as well as a part of their heritage. It's like finding a missing piece of yourself.
I think a lot of people think that adopted kids have this missing piece because they don't have their birth parents. They don't know if they have any siblings out there. They don't know if they were loved. They have this pretty much blank spot in the early beginning parts of their life. I don't really see it that way. I don't feel like a part of me is missing. I know my story. You know, obviously there are some very, obvious questions in it, but just because that there's questions in a story doesn't mean that it's not complete. Had I stayed in the situation I was, and there wasn't, the one-child policy, and had I been able to stay with my birth parents, I wouldn't be living the full life that I am now, and I wouldn't be using all my potential to its fullest.
I really thought Isabella coming back here to China that she would look into the eyes of these children and she would see a bit of herself.
That's my mom, Dawn Dixon. She came along with me on the trip. My mom's a big optimist, and I think she initially thought that I would come here to China and find some amazing light bulb that would just light up in my head, and everything would be so happy, and life would be solved.
She looks at them and she says, "Mom, did I do that? Did I look like that little girl?"
I don't have a flat head, so I know I was picked up. I think I was a cute baby, and everyone likes the cute ones. She likes to store food in her cheeks when she eats as a snack for later. Oh, hi! Which is something that I used to do. I liked to also store food in my cheeks. She's also quite demanding, like me. And she likes the red Audi. I had a Barbie Jeep. Hello! Hello! Do we have fun in the car? Her and I share the traits of being a food store, which I guess is something that they do because, you don't get to eat whenever you want here. So, if you want a snack later, it's nice and easy to store it in your cheeks until later. Many of these kids are struggling with an illness or a physical disability. I know what it is like to be sick. In 2017, I was diagnosed with cancer. Today, I am cancer-free. I think it is so important for girls like me to come back to China, not because they are missing a part of themselves here, but to maybe explore that part of themselves. It's important to see the country that you were born in and see the area they're born in, the people for once to, look like everyone else, which is such a strange thing to think of. I grew up in a very predominantly white neighborhood and area. It's really cool to be able to finally come here and see other people that look like me. And we were on the subway in Beijing, And I kind of was looking up and down the subway, and I kind of turned to my mom and I was like, oh my gosh, like everyone has my nose, the Asian no bridge nose. And I think it's cool because for the first time, she feels what it's like to look and to be different.
Hi! I'm on the Great Wall.
My whole life, I've kind of, wanted to go and see the Great Wall and go and see all the major touristy sightseeing spots in China, and being able to finally do them has been amazing.
I've seen that video lots of times, my parents saying they'll always bring me back, and now I'm back.
I brought my mom along.
You did it. Pretty awesome.
Let's start out positive, yeah? So, positives. I don't have to sightsee alone because that's kind of depressing. And it's nice having, a parent figure there helping you through. Negatives. Let me start. Here's the list. Though I love my mom, she can be demanding. And she thinks she can speak Chinese even though it's so off.
Ni hao. Ni hao. Look at those teeth.
There are so many reasons to come back to China, but the biggest reason is you can give these children at Alina's home a sense of empathy no one else can, and they will give it right back. It's important because you can relate to these kids on a level that no one else really can, because you know what it's like to be abandoned, whether it be on a road or in front of a hospital or in front of an orphanage. When you look at these kids, you do see some sort of reflection of yourself, or at some point in the past, that was you.
Whether or not Isabella realizes there's a missing piece, or even if there is a missing piece, this was an important trip. This was a first step in that process of figuring out who she is and what God wants from her. And I'm just so excited to see the rest of the journey.
Beautiful story, beautiful film. We're going to have a chance to talk to Dawn more about this journey that Isabella took this past summer in just a few minutes, so please stay with us.
$150 over $90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it, or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes, and you can do it here. So what are you waiting for? Just go to the site.
Exploration Wonder Park is a go!
There's nothing more powerful than imagination. But don't just imagine. Use STEM to change the world.
Who's with me?
It's gonna hurt tomorrow.
If she can STEM, so can you. Find out more at She Can STEM.
Action!
Welcome back to City Corner. I'm here with my guest, Dawn Meadows Dixon, and we just watched the amazing and breathtaking documentary film that Dawn made with her daughter, Isabella Dixon, this past summer. And it was the story of Isabella's first journey back to China since she was adopted when she was 1 year old. Is that right?
She was 15 months old. And in fact, you and I were talking.
Yeah, so I was actually there, and this is really such a touching moment for me to be here with you and to share Isabella's story, because I was at Lambert Airport in St. Louis the day that Isabella and her sister Olivia came off the airplane with you and your husband. And I remember that moment. We'll never forget these little girls. They're little tiny, 15 months old. It was just a beautiful moment for you and your family, and I was so happy to be a part of it. But here we are 20 years later. The girls are now at school. They're in college. They're 20 years old. Yeah, 20. They're almost 21. Yeah,
almost going to be 21.
Yeah, and
where did the time go?
Yeah. So Isabella's not here with us to share this story as she's in school, but you're here to represent her, and hopefully she doesn't mind that you share some of her thoughts.
No,
but
not at all.
But watching the film and seeing what an experience it must have been. Do you remember how Isabella felt leading up to that trip to China? How she felt? Was she nervous? Was she scared? Was she excited to go back to her birthplace? And what was it like? How did she feel when she was there? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It's interesting because the whole opportunity came because the adoption agency said, wouldn't this be wonderful to document this, because we want other girls like her here in St. Louis to go back, volunteer at Alina's Home, which was founded by Children's Hope International, which is the adoption agency here in St. Louis, really one of the biggest adoption agencies in the country that brought a lot of young babies here. And she said, I want to get more girls to go back, to volunteer, come full circle, go on that trip of self-discovery. Isabella can be one of the first ones to do that, and we can tell her story.
Why is that important for the girls to go back to their birthplace?
The thought is, at the adoption agency, and they are psychologists and counselors, and they're very involved in the whole adoption process, is that sometimes adopted children, as we mentioned in the video, there's this missing piece that they're trying to find, like anybody, searching for your roots, going back to your birthplace, but they don't know the beginning of their life. So the thought is, go back, be amongst the people where you were born, even though you weren't raised here, and maybe you'll be able to fill that hole. But the interesting thing is, we get there, and I plan to do the interview with her at the end of our 10-day volunteer experience at the orphanage, and Isabella starts to say to me as days go on, Mom, I don't have a missing piece. And I go, honey, you know, I didn't rehearse this with her, I didn't give her the questions, but I said, the purpose of the video is to talk about your self-discovery. And she said, but my self-discovery is not in the script that you have in your head. So typical 20-year-old, right?
So were you, as a filmmaker and as her mom, expecting there to be more drama surrounding that moment of going back to the birthplace?
I did think that there was going to be some drama. And you know what? I think there was some internal drama. And if she was here right now, she'd go, Mom. But I do think there was a struggle. She looked at these children. She did see herself. As I said in the film, she said, Mom, did I do that? Did I act like that? And when she discovered that baby had food in her cheeks, and the way we discovered it was she was lying down and her cheeks were all puffy. We opened them up and there was banana inside. Yeah. And she said, that's what I used to do when I was a baby, right? When we brought her home from the orphanage back in 1999, she kept putting food in her cheeks, and I couldn't understand why. And I talked to the adoption agency, and they said, sometimes these babies are afraid. They get it in their head, if they've got the food in their cheeks, they won't go hungry. So that connection was made, and I think that was emotional for Isabella. But she didn't have that so-called missing piece on this trip. And so when we did the interview after the end of 10 days, she said, you all think I have a missing piece, but I don't. It was her truth, which I loved because she was authentic.
Right. And a lot of it's her age too, and she's still on that journey of growing up and maturing, and her experience 10 years from now, 20 years from now, if she went back, could be completely different, as we know.
I think so. This was
adults.
the first step. You know, we weren't supposed to solve all of the issues with this trip. And as we mentioned, she's got a twin. So we said, we're going to be going back as a family.
Right.
Her twin wasn't invited
so
on this
what
trip.
was it like for her twin sister, Olivia, to not be on that journey? Olivia has not been back, is that correct?
No.
So now Isabella.
A lot of people call her Elizabeth. That's
I've
funny.
never called her Elizabeth. I don't know where that came
Isabella.
from. But Isabella has gone back, and Olivia didn't get to go with her. How did that feel for Isabella not to have her sister, her identical twin sister, with her?
I think that was tough, especially for Olivia staying back here. And they are never separated. You know, so that was one of the first big separations. They went to school together, they go to college together. So I think that was difficult. And Isabella made a promise. She said, Olivia, we were born in Jiangdu, China. I'm going to a village and an orphanage in Beijing. Even if I have the opportunity, I'm not going to Jiangdu unless I take you with. So their goal is to one day go together to where they were actually left. They were left in a box on the side of the road. As Isabella explained, I was left and an American couple adopted me. What she doesn't explain in the video is that she was left with her twin. We felt that telling that part of the story is a whole nother story.
Right.
So the adoption agency said, let's just stick with Isabella's story right now.
Right.
And funny
and each of the
for
girls
Olivia.
may have their own experience
Exactly.
going back. And
Yeah.
I love that they want to share that home city together someday.
Yeah, hopefully to go together as a family. I know the adoption agency started the process of trying to find their birth family. As we mentioned in the video, Isabella had cancer, and there's a genetic component to it. So when you're adopted, you want to find your birth parents because you want to find out what is the health issue that I may have to deal with.
What's the background? We
have not found their birth parents yet, but that would be a trip that would be wonderful to take. But one thing that was interesting that Isabella did when she came back talking to Olivia, she said, I've been there, we stayed in a small village outside of Beijing, we worked in an orphanage similar to probably foster home where you and I might have been, and I am thankful that we were adopted and brought to St. Louis. I mean, she told Olivia that, you know, had we stayed there, as she said in the film, we just wouldn't have had the opportunities, I don't think.
Yeah.
The aunties in the orphanage love those children, and they are so cared
and
for.
And the aunties are the caregivers?
Are the caregivers. They call them aunties or you know, nannies. These women, and you saw a few of them in the piece, they love these children. They have fresh food every day, but they are in an institution. They're in a foster home. My daughters were in separate foster homes, similar to that. They were actually separated because when they were found, they were so skinny. As Americans, we said, why would they separate twins? When we adopted them, it was the first time they had come together in a year.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother story.
Oh, that is,
and that's why we didn't go into.
That's a great story too. So let's shift gears for a minute and talk about your experience, because for you to go back to the place to the country where you adopted these girls almost 20 years ago, what was that like for you?
It was emotional, and I think Isabella, we deal with emotions differently. Isabella deals with emotions where she might shut down. I'm, as you know, the tears are flowing, and I see these children, and I see my daughter interacting with them. I didn't expect to get as emotional as I did. And I've got to then interview myself because I shot the film and wrote it and interviewed her. And the first part of the interview of myself, I'm bawling like a baby. And the med students that are there watching this, they're all like, and I said, don't worry, I can edit myself out.
Right.
Because it was so emotional for me.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And just being back there again, where you had 20 years ago, 19 years ago, this incredibly emotional and difficult time when you went over there and took the time there to go through the logistics of bringing the girls back here. So it probably took you back to that place to a certain extent.
I mean, you fight for these kids. When you adopt children, it's a long process.
So I want to talk for a moment before we have to end our interview about the making of the film. Did you, when you went out on this journey, you had some time to prepare before the trip. Did you know, as Isabella even said in the video, that you had a script in your mind? How much of what was in your mind actually came to fruition on film, and how much just happened as you went?
Well, I think it's important if you're doing something like this, and my background, as you know, is in television and as a reporter, and I know if you go out on a story and you've got too much of the script written, you're going to miss the story. So no, I had a mission from the adoption agency, which was just self-discovery. Missing piece was kind of the catchphrase. And I was able to incorporate that in there, but that wasn't the case. She didn't have, at this point, a missing piece. No, I let the story breathe and become what it was, and tried to capture moments of her with the children, moments of her on the wall saying, hey, my mom and dad talked about me being here, or the moment with the girl in the car. That happened because I was just shooting B-roll. So being open to that. But I have never shot my own film before. I've always been with a photographer, and so I feel like I have an eye for it, but learning how to use, I actually used a GoPro for all of the B-roll and a gimbal. And the gimbal was the most unbelievable thing because I was able to have a stable shot and shoot these magnificent scenes that we saw in China, and then was able to shoot her on an HD camera for the interview.
Yeah,
wonderful. It's a dream come true for me, not only for my daughter, but it's one of the bucket list things to be able to do a documentary like this.
What a great learning experience for you. What a great bonding experience for you and Isabella. If people want to see the video again, it's on YouTube. Search for Dawn Meadows Dixon documentaries. The film is called Back to China.
Yes.
So I want to make sure people know how to find it. So we're going to take a break now, but thank you so much for joining us today for City Corner, and thank you very much to our guest, Dawn Meadows Dixon, for being here today, and to Isabella, who's off at college. We thank you as well for being a part of this show today. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching STL TV and City Corner.
Bye.